kind of our first, I would say, technically formal Women in FinOps event that we're doing. We've done some informal attachments onto summits, and we do have a SIG called Women in FinOps channel within the Slack community that people typically post articles, inspirational things. And so we really just want to kind of get this like vamped up a little bit more this next year. We're hoping to maybe do one of these every month. You all can hold us to that. And if you're interested in doing one after you hear this today, let Dina and I know as well, and we'll get you slotted. The idea behind this series is just really for women that are in FinOps, adjacent to FinOps, to kind of voice their experience. How did they get here? What have been some of their takeaways? What have been some of the barriers that they've gone through to get here? What are their aspirations next in this field or beyond? And kind of keep it lighthearted. We will do some, I guess I can go through the agenda next. Well, first, the code of conduct. You all probably have seen this. If you haven't, please check it out. It's on our website as well. Just be respectful here. Kind of, this is our cone of sharing knowledge here. There's no sales pitch that's allowed. So going through the agenda, so we do have a Women in FinOps speaker today. This is ideally what we want to do going forward. We'll tell you a little bit more on like how to get involved with the foundation and where we need involvement as well. And then we'll do some breakouts at the end. And I've got a couple discussion questions, but it's really more of just to get to know each other. So very informal in that way. Got some chat questions coming. Oh, perfect. Thank you, Dina. So jumping right into it, we have the one and only Alex Head, who is the head of optimization for AWS. She started the optics team at AWS, and she'll tell you a little bit more about that. I know it's grown tremendously in size. And so I think with that, I'm going to hand it over to Alex and just tell us a little bit about your journey. How did you get here, and what have been kind of your struggles along that path?
Yeah, well, that's a loaded question. Where do I start? So I could tell you a little bit, tell you how I kind of got to AWS and how optics became, because I know optics, for those who aren't aware of what it is, it kind of sounds like it's very aloof name. But I basically was doing kind of cost optimization at IBM, but basically every time they acquired a company, my team would go in and see if they were using it in an optimized way, do the security checks and get them all on contract and all that fun stuff. And I did that for a little bit. I had been at Weather Channel, it got acquired by IBM, and I then got recruited by AWS. And when I started AWS, they had just kind of started a section of accounts. It was like 40 accounts that they called global accounts. And it was testing out, like, if we had all these specialists dedicated to these accounts, how would that impact their growth? How would that impact their journey? And how would that, make our partnership stronger? And so me and one other person had a little bit more of that optimization background. And so we just kind of hit the ground running and tested it out, right? What does this mean? Can we go up to these customers and just say, like, I'm here to save you money? And so we started doing that, and it gained momentum. Global accounts grew a little bit. And then during that process, I was working with one of my customers, Dow Jones, who, like, we kept having all this data and showed them all this stuff that, hey, here's how you optimize, here's how you can save money, and nothing was happening. And so we brainstormed with the CIO at the time, who is actually now my boss at AWS. So things come full circle in career. And we decided to try something called a FinHack, which was a all-day event. First half of the day, we did like learning and teaching. And then second half of the day, broke out into groups, hackathon to save money. And then the winning team got prizes. And so as global and then strategic accounts was growing, that momentum around FinHacks was growing a lot too. And at the time, the global and strategic accounts got a new sales leader, someone who, if you read the article I wrote earlier this year, is a great mentor of mine. And I've always kind of looked up to Carla. And she joined, and I told her, I said, hey, I'm so excited for you to be here, but I'm going to go run FinHacks in the central cloud economics org. They're going to give me headcount and I can run this as a program. And she told me I was making a mistake. And then the next day came in, and her and my manager at the time had gotten me 4 headcount, and it was like, I at the time was a lower level at AWS who wasn't normally a manager, and was like, build out this team and see what you can do. And then was kind of born Optics. So I hired up as fast as possible. About a month after I got the headcount, I figured I found out that we were very, very surprise pregnant. And so I was like, okay, this is a timeline and a little intense. And so I hired those 4 people, some of those who I bet a lot of you actually know. And my last day before I went on maternity leave, Carla told us, you need a name to set you aside. We'll just use it internally. And Andy on my team and we wrote a bunch of stuff on a whiteboard, and one of those was Optics, and she picked Optics. And I came back from maternity leave in 2020, and all of a sudden everyone was calling us Optics. And now 2 years later, that team has grown from the 5 of us to 41. So it's been a crazy, crazy journey here.
What is your background in? Like, what did you go to school for, and how does that connect to what you're doing today?
It's my favorite question. My degree is in animal science. Someone the other day said to me, like cows to clouds. And I decided if I ever write a book, that's got to be the title of it. But first off, let me say, and for anyone who is either at like a changing point in their career or has no idea what they want to do, or maybe you study something and you just don't like it. Like I was horrible at school. I had all through high school and college a 2.9 GPA exactly on the dot. And I was a large animal science major, which I'm not really sure where I got that from, because I grew up in Atlanta. So it's not like I grew up on a farm. And about halfway through college, I went to my college counselor and I said, I'm not going to get into vet school, and I'm not good at school. Like I don't have an interest in adding more school onto it. And so he looked at my class schedule and said, well, to graduate on time, I would keep the major, which I was fine with. And he said, but you've taken all of your electives in math and statistics. And I was like, well, yeah, because I can get an A in that. And he said, well, maybe that's a sign that you like that stuff. And so I started digging a little bit more into the numbers side. And then when I graduated, I took a job as a technical recruiter. So not doing any technology, but I was recruiting jobs in technology. And they hired a ton of people right out of college. Is that like kind of the work you do is what you earn. And I looked at the jobs I was filling, and I got to know the companies that I was filling those jobs for, and figured out what I liked and like what pieces of the culture I liked, what pieces of jobs even if it made no sense to me, that I was like, this is interesting. And through that, the Weather Channel was one of my customers, and I instantly fell in love with their culture. And so I took the first thing I could find. It was a 3-month contract as a financial analyst, which I have no finance background, and completely made up stuff in the interview. And that developed into more and more AWS. So basically, they had just started a huge journey out of data centers onto AWS, and I saw all the bills come through because I was on the finance side. And so I bought AWS for Dummies. I still have my original copy in my office. I printed out our AWS bill, which for those of you who have done that is hundreds of pages. And right at the end of my contract, I went and made a presentation to the VP that I worked under and said, I think this is how you guys can track and watch your AWS growth a little bit better. This was probably 8-9 years ago, so kind of pre a lot of the tooling and any of that existing. And they hired me on full time to do that. So that's kind of how I got to this point.
I think a lot of things, especially myself and other friends have talked about, is like feeling a lot of imposter syndrome in this space. Like you just take AWS alone, how many services you have to know and how you can optimize them and things like that. And it's overwhelming to think about trying to keep track of all that stuff. And then even the people that you work with, you're working with architects, engineers, VPs of finance. There is a lot of that. I'm curious of like, where have you felt that?
Me constantly. I mean, I honestly think I feel it as a mom. There's times that, I mean, I was at the pediatrician this morning, my son getting a vaccine, and I was like, I was looking around at these other parents who seem to have it so together. I was like, what am I doing here? But I think imposter syndrome, number one, there's a piece to it of the feeling. I won't say imposter syndrome, but there's a piece of the feeling that I do think is a healthy, right? Like, I don't think if I'm not in an uncomfortable situation, or if I'm not making myself nervous or uncomfortable, and it's been a couple of months, then I'm not growing, right? So I do think that it's a sign of growth, but I think it's easy, especially, I'm 31. My team grew really fast, and I'm now a manager over managers, and a lot of people in that position have a lot, longer of a background than me, or they probably didn't study animal science in Auburn, Alabama. So I think that comes up a good amount. But I read the book by Phil Knight. He's the founder of Nike, and he in it talks about how he like repeated these mottos to himself through the whole Nike journey. And it made me stop and think, what am I constantly repeating to myself? And now I have it written down, and I say these things so many times a day to myself, but the number one thing is pick your battles. Because I mean, with everything in life. And then the number two thing is like, I wouldn't have the seat at the table if I wasn't supposed to be there. And, in a company like Amazon, it's so big that it's easy to kind of get in your head, but they move so quick, and we wouldn't have been able to get to where we are now if it can't just be luck, right? Like, things didn't just fall into place, and kind of trusting that and knowing what you're talking about. And I also think that part of the thing that's successful about the team and each and every person on it is like this will and want to constantly learn. And if you approach a meeting like, I want to learn, versus I have no idea what people are talking about, then it kind of helps shift it in your head a bit.
I love that a lot. I saw someone put daily affirmations, and I was volunteering last week with a couple of young girls from like kindergarten, fourth grade, and we had them practice affirmations, and they were so uncomfortable doing it. And it was just interesting how we start at such a young age, kind of feeling that way, and it does take practice.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that the one other one that I kind of like go in and out of a bit, or I mean, I repeat it to myself, but I probably don't repeat it to myself as much as I should, is you're a nice person. Like, it genuinely, I'm a nice person, and people in situations are always going to kind of be like, put you off or be rude. And I feel like it's exactly what you're saying, right? Like, remember, your intentions are right, and affirm that, and like trust that, and you're not going to get it from other people, right? Like, most time in a business meeting, maybe like when we were kids, but in a business meeting, someone's not going to be like, hey, you're a nice person.
That's true. I had a question to you, like, now that the Optic is built and it's like very customer, very much customer focused, customer seat all the time. I know we've got people in our community that are like, if you creative, you could do this. You're always getting like advice on the product. Like, how have you had to deal with saying no to things, and like, what is your tactics? Because I'm sure you get flooded with a lot of ideas all the time, and we should do this, we should do this. How do you handle that?
Yeah, so I think as the team grew, so when we had our first big headcount jump, and then the next jump, we like had merged in another team into it. But when we had that first headcount jump, I had about 23 people reporting directly to me. And my favorite part of the day is when I get to have those conversations with people on my team and get to hear their ideas, and then maybe, give them one route that made the idea better, or, push them up. I think of it as even though it hurts when it like stinks when people leave the team, if I helped open one extra door for them, then I did something right. Right. Like that is that the people side of it is what I have to keep kind of to level my head out of when there's a lot on board. But I would say, you know, when that happened, I stopped and said, like, what are my priorities here? Like, I need to pick those and see what is going to make me happy. And in that, I realized that the interaction with individuals on the team, that being creative. And so like the team will tell you today, I was just helping someone before this. I will do PowerPoints for anyone. Like I love, it's like therapy, like moving colors around and making a PowerPoint pretty. And the number side of it, like being able to have data tied to something. And so even though there's a lot always going on, if I can have those opportunities to have interaction with people one-on-one, or, you know, in a setting like this where maybe something I say is helpful, then it gives me that kind of micro joy that I need. And then have that creativity and be able to still be tied to numbers and like find that, then I can kind of push through it. I mean, there's always going to be a million things. If people like, if my camera was a little bit wider right now, you'd see like 10 DIY crafts over here. I've got like stuff that I'm making for one of the offsites next week. And I always pick up more than I should, but I try to keep with my themes that I know will make me happy in that sense.
Being a mom too, have you had to work on setting boundaries, and what does that look like for you?
Yeah, so this is in, you know, I say this, I guess, with some caution, because I know not everyone would agree with this, and that's okay. Things work differently for everyone. To me, when I became a mom, and had to kind of stop and say, like, where are my priorities? Out of every single thing, out of you know, the people in my life, whether it's work or personal, my partnership with my husband has to come first. Like when we are better partners, when we are a team, we are better parents, we are better at our jobs, we're more sane. And so we really try to prioritize like us time. And then that naturally makes it like such an easy prioritization and part of our day-to-day life for us to put Warren and our family like ahead of everything. And so like we will start meetings late one day a week and go play tennis for 45 minutes. And I have to have that same time, and it puts us on the same page, and or maybe sometimes it's cooking, to be a better parent. And then, you know, when we have those, then it like will trickle down into the work piece, right?
Yeah, that's great. I had another question for you, and then maybe I'll open it up to others here. You touched a little bit about the impact mentors have had on your career. Can you go into a little bit more? Like, have your mentors always been people that have reported to you? Have they been peers? How have you established in those mentorship relationships?
Yeah, so I have never had a ton of luck with like an official mentorship, and that's not to say it doesn't work for some people. But I look at people who I can learn from their perspective. You know, it's really cool to see other people on this call, but I see people that I've worked through my career with, and people that, you know, I've probably had quite a few standoffs with in work, but I learned so much from them. And so I see anyone that I'm kind of interacting with to be that mentor to me, and every single person on the team, right? Like if I'm hiring someone and I can't learn anything from them, then there's something off, right? Or I'm not looking at it the right way. And that's so important to me. And I'd say, you know, the biggest advice I think and like best mentorship that I've like, or like across the board, and multiple people have told me this, you know, in the article I talked specifically about one person who did, but you know, I for so long had tried to build up this persona of like, you know, I'm invincible, I can take it all, bring it on. And I mean, when I started at AWS, I took my age fully off of my LinkedIn. I was like, no one's going to take me seriously if they know I'm 26 years old. And so I was just always trying to build up this like persona. And then when I got the advice about, you know, vulnerability, and like good leaders are vulnerable and show that, right? Like they're not robots. And, when I started at Weather Channel, when I went permanent, and started doing more of the cloud work, like I think probably 10 days after I went permanent at Weather Channel, I got diagnosed with stage 3 cancer at the age of 23. And I was like, I'm not going to let anyone see me crack, right? And I came in bald head and all, and I took very few days off. And I realized that like them seeing me as like always there wasn't necessarily what made me strong, right? But when I talked about like, hey, I'm having a really shitty day, that is like what can show the strength and the vulnerability. Another example is when the Uvalde shooting happened, I had reached out to the team and said, like, my husband was traveling that week. I had my son myself, and he had just started a new school, and it just kind of like, I'm sure as it did a lot of people on this call, really, really, really rattled me. And I sent a note to the team and was like, here's the resources that we have. And also, if you need a minute, if you need time, take it. And someone had started, I think it was like their second day, and reached out to me and was like, this is, you just saying this helps so much. And you don't realize the impact of that, right? Like, you don't have to be someone's manager or, leader, but like having that vulnerability and showing that you're a human gives the people around you to be the space to be human too. And we're all human. And that allows people to put boundaries up, allows people to prioritize, and essentially will make them want to work on things that they enjoy and make them happy, and show that.
I love it. Yeah, I can relate to that too. I feel like when I was managing a team, I was very vulnerable at times, and I was like, should I be doing this, or should I put a wall up? And it was kind of always balancing that as well. So it's really great to get your perspective on this. I want to open up to the group. If anybody else would like to also ask Alex a question, and you can come off mute, come on video. So I'll open it up to the whole group right now. And you're doing a great job, Alex. Just field these questions. We did not practice any of these.
So are you, Ashley? You're carrying the load of asking questions because I had a train going by. Alex, you have a speech pattern that I recognize, which is downplaying some really enormous accomplishments for being, and I say this, so early in your career. And I think that that's something that a lot of people in this call are probably really familiar with, or have done themselves. I think that's why I wanted to get your take on that mentorship. Not all of us have had like the privilege of working for women in leadership. Do you think that has an impact for the teams that you build? When you think about that, how do you identify leaders on your team that have that sort of understanding?
Yeah, well, I mean, I would say, so, the culture on the team is like absolutely my first priority. Always, I will push off any leadership ask if it means that we focus on the culture a little bit. And I think when you hire people who have that too, and I know like other companies, AWS has a very long interview process, and I do think that you get to learn a lot about people in that, and get to know the like what kind of person is joining the team, or what the opportunity is. And so I've found that as you show the importance of that, and you hire people, that are similar to, you want people who are different than you. Of course, you don't want like a bunch of, you want to be able to learn, you want people to fill your gaps, you want that, but like the core of culture on the team, and teamwork and collaboration are there. And I think that like translates a lot. And then the transparency piece, right? I think that is important for anyone on the team. And so it's naturally kind of happened. But it's definitely, I would say the thing that keeps me up at night is, you know, we're growing so fast. I can't be on every interview loop. Like, how do we make sure we're keeping this consistent? And recently, a lot of my teams have done their own offsites, and I've like come and stopped in for a day and been a fly on the wall. And it has just been one of like my proudest career moments, watching them run these offsites, all a little bit different and all doing, you know, their own thing, but also carrying along the themes that are so important to me. And so I think it's, you know, finding those core things that are non-negotiables, but also like not putting so much restriction on it. And I'd also say I have never, there's probably like one or two messages that have gone unreturned, but rarely, especially at Amazon, have I ever reached out to another female or, you know, or man or anyone that I'm interested in learning more about, like their background or what they're doing, and have they said no, right? And so, and if they do, I mean, I guess, you know, it's kind of shame on them. It's not embarrassing, right? Like, you put yourself out there. And so I'm constantly kind of looking for that advice piece. And then I'd also say, we're all going to go, you know, it's rare these days that people stay at the same company their entire career. But you meet really special people, every team, every place you are. You know, I've had multiple bosses at Amazon, but each individual team that I was on with the different bosses, I've made lifelong friends and lifelong mentors. And you find those people that like, you really like listening to what they're saying and the culture that they're exuding, and you surround yourself with them.
Take notes, everyone. Lori, you had your hand raised.
Yep, I sure did. So Alex, this is so awesome getting to learn from you, getting to know more about you and your journey. I'm real curious, for me, in terms of working for a global company. TIBCO's a global company. When I think about culture and I think about the culture of women in tech in North America, in the US, and how dynamic our evolution has been in tech, I'm wondering about your experiences with cultural differences, with bringing culture into global situations. Are there different experiences you've had? Does American women in tech culture translate and support folks? Just tell me stories about what your experience is. I'm really curious.
Yeah, so I think, and part of this goes back to, I'm not sure if everyone had joined yet, but one thing that like Ashley had said earlier, when we were just starting the call out is, you know, she was like, this meeting isn't just for, you know, women in FinOps. It's just to give women in FinOps a voice and you know, have that voice highlighted. And I think that, I mean, our team's in 6 different time zones. We're all over the place. And, you know, we have global customers too. And you know, you learn and you adapt. And I think that as long as you go into every situation willing to learn and wanting to learn what's different, and being open about that, it's always, you know, best on the forefront. But I'd say that there's a couple things that I've been really lucky about. Like my first hire outside of the US, Andy, he's in London, and he was really, really good at setting up those boundaries of like what is important, you know, with his time zone and his day-to-day life. And him being in such a drastic time zone than a lot of us who were on the West Coast. And that taught me a lot. And so I think that I just go into all the situations ready to learn and like ask how that operates and not assuming. But you know, it's a constant learning, right? I mean, I think we're constantly hiring people all over the place, and and also just with customers, like every customer is a little bit different. And you know, we last year started working with our financial services customers, and those were a lot different than some of the media customers that we worked with a lot. And so it's kind of figuring out that culture no matter what, right? No matter and figuring out what works for them. And honestly, I think that's why a lot of our conversations on optics start with some of the KPIs and unit metrics, because we want to figure out how are they operating internally, and then kind of gearing the conversation towards them.
Thank you so much. Very cool.
That's
So
awesome.
I'm
Well,
seeing a lot of great comments
Good.
in the chat. I did want to, Sarah says, love the empathy. We have, oh, hey, Michelle's here. Say hey. Having men as allies is key, which really addresses the next comment in the chat, which was, it is so hard to find powerful female mentors. And so for those who do not identify as women who are on this call, thanks for being here. And thanks for letting us center the voices that don't often get centered in really big gatherings in tech, as we know, but where a lot of the work is done and where a lot of the expertise lives. So we're really happy about that. I think Ashley and Stacy, we're ready to kick out into our breakouts, unless there's any other questions we want to. Does anyone want to raise a hand before we start breaking out into breakouts?
Yeah, I know we'll do breakouts. And Ashley, I know you have this on the slide. I think what's next is to get involved. I want to call out one thing, and we've talked about mentoring a lot on this call. And it's almost as if people knew that this Friday is a cutoff date to reach out and apply for a peer-to-peer mentoring group that we're starting with. This is the first iteration of mentoring within the FinOps Foundation. If you're interested in doing peer-to-peer mentoring group, it's going to start in September. We're organizing folks regionally, so you can do it within your time zone. And I just dropped a link out to the form on that group. And yeah, Dina, I like what you did there. Appreciate that. Everybody teed it up. But Ashley, back to you. I just wanted to let people know that link to do peer-to-peer mentoring is.
Yep. Thanks. Yeah, and so this is a public event, so there might be a few of you that aren't part of the FinOps Foundation. So I just want to mention that you can get involved and join it. We have a pretty active, engaging Slack community through that. We do have a channel called SIG Women in FinOps. I'm actually going to take some of the topics that I'm seeing come in the chat, and we'll kind of continue that conversation there as well. This is me doing a plea, a call out. We do need some more diverse voices when it comes to being part of our working groups. Our working groups are typically focused around a short, 6-week sprint, trying to work on putting out an open source deliverable to the community. We could use more folks joining those and bringing like the softer side of the technical aspect into it. And if anybody's ever interested in speaking opportunities, reach out to me, reach out to Joe. We'll help walk you through it. We've had things like summits. We've got our FinOps X that will be coming up next year. We've got things like this. And so if you want to see if it's a good fit, I'm happy to talk you through it. I also like doing PowerPoints, so I can help shape those as well if you need that. But just kind of a call, there's a lot of places to get involved. I just want to lastly, I think, just thank Alex for being here and doing this and being our first formal guest speaker. We really, really appreciate hearing your voice.
Thank you for having me. And I'll also say, I mean, I know we're doing breakout groups, but if you have more questions or you want to talk through things, like I'm always more than happy to. I am, not the quickest responder always when I'm on the road, but I will respond. I will get to it. Ashley could tell you, I'm sure her message sat in my LinkedIn for a minute. But I'm here if you have questions or want to talk further.
Thanks, House. Yeah, we'll drop your LinkedIn here in a second. So what we're going to do next is go into breakout rooms. Hope people can stay around for this. We do have a few things just to kind of break the ice and get started. So I will show you this real quick. And Stacy, myself, and Dina will be in those rooms. But just start out by introducing yourself. You can talk about what company you work at, how'd you get here in FinOps, how'd you get to this career, how has it impacted you now being in a FinOps career, adjacent career. What challenges do you feel like you're facing as a woman in this industry, and how can allies support you? Because we do have quite a few allies on the call as well.
Yeah, and so I've created 3 breakout rooms. I will automatically am assigning people to the rooms just so it can go really quick and fast. I'll stay here in case people didn't make it over and join a room in a minute. All the rooms have been named by Alex Head isms that we heard today. So there is "You Are Nice." PowerPoint is my therapy, and you can be strong and vulnerable. So those are the names of the breakout rooms. That doesn't mean anything, but maybe just really internalize that as you're in the breakout room and think about that and what it means to you, whatever. Dina, you had something before I send people out?
Oh my gosh, if you're in this call and you know who you are and you're leading a working group, if you've chaired a working group or participated in a working group, plug your working group. Tell us about your experience in it. This is how we've been building community over the last, I don't know how many years. It's just being able to collaborate with these fantastic people who we otherwise might never have been, we're put into a team together with. So thank you so much. I'm so grateful for this group.
So Ashley, what did it say, like 15, 20 minutes in the working groups and come back and let people go? I'm not working groups, breakouts. I'm kind of going to just reiterate one thing that Dina said. And I know that for a long time, and some people are very attached to this motto that's work hard, be humble, or an iteration on that. I'm actually like vehemently opposed to that. You do not need to be humble. I think a lot of time as women, we need to shout our successes from the rooftop. And if you ever need someone to shout your success, reach out to anyone that's here today and we will do it for you. Do not be humble. Share your successes because we want to share them with you. And with that, let's join those breakout rooms for like the next 15 minutes and have good conversations, everyone.